Hello and welcome to my channel. I am BeardedDev, bringing you another SQL tutorial, and this is part of a mini series I'm doing on my channel all about window functions. And in this video we're going to be calculating running totals and running averages. And don't forget, as always, if you do like the video, please do hit that thumbs up button. So what we're going to be going through in this video is we want to calculate the running total and average of customers' spend. So let's start off by understanding first of all exactly what a Windows frame is. So we've seen in previous videos where we've been looking at window functions, partitioning the data, so we understand that we can effectively divide our data into partitions. That may be different customers, maybe dates. We can create partitions on anything we like. Now, a window frame is a filtered portion of each partition. Now, the units available are rows and range, and we do have another video coming shortly to the channel which will explain the difference between rows and range as well. So I've got this small diagram on screen that demonstrates the current row we're looking at is sales ID 43. As you can see, this data is sorted by sales date. Then if we look at preceding rows, they include sales ID 63 and 3. As you can tell, I didn't insert them in the correct order. And then the rows following the current row are sales ID 83 and 23. So if I wanted to create a window of the current row and one row behind that current row, we would look at using Preceding to create that window and calculate that. So that's just a quick overview of that. We'll jump over to SQL Server now and we'll go through some examples which might make it a bit clearer for you. So I've jumped over to SQL, and as always I'm just going to start by showing you the underlying table, and this is the same table we've used throughout this series. So in our sales _2 table we've got a sales ID, which is an identity column, customer ID relating to the customer, employee ID, sales date, sales total, and simply a payment method, which is either cash or card. So what we're going to focus on first of all is I'm just going to narrow down this result set. So we're just going to have a look at customer ID 3. So if I just say where sales cust ID equals 3, and we can see we've got 5 rows for this customer. Now we're going to be having a look at calculating a running total first of all, and then move on to a running average. We're going to narrow down the data using the where clause just initially, and then we'll have a look at a larger result set. So I'm just going to order this result by sales date because that's what we're going to be using to calculate our running total. So we can see we've ordered our results now, and I'm just going to narrow this query down just to get the columns we're going to be looking at. So if I have a look at sales ID, which is useful being a unique value, sales date, and sales total initially. So I'll just return these 3 columns. So we want to calculate a running total of customer spend, just to see how the customer increases his spend with us or her spend with us. So again, we're going to be summing sales total. And don't forget, if you are new to window functions, there are some other videos on my channel that introduce that as part of the series, so go back and watch those and you'll get a better overview of understanding what we're trying to do here. So we're going to be using a sum sales total, and then we're going to write out our over clause. Now, because we've got a where clause in the query at the moment, we're not going to be partitioning the data. We will be doing that later on. So as part of the over clause, we will need an order by, and in this case we're going to be looking at order by sales date. I have just brought the slide back up here to show what we're trying to achieve. So with our sales total, initially our frame is going to be the current row. Because there's only one, we're going to be looking at the current row. When we move on to the next date, the next time a sale was made, we're going to be looking at the current row plus the preceding row. One row preceding in that case. When we get down to the third row, we're going to be looking at the current row plus one row preceding plus two rows preceding. So we're going to have a look at how we'd write that query to give us that running total. And how we do that is part of the over clause. So what we're going to do here is we're going to order by sales date, and we're going to want rows between unbounded preceding, and I will explain what that means shortly, and current row. And if we go ahead and execute that now, I'll just give that an alias as running total. And there we can see in our result set we've got £84.30 because we're just looking at the current row. The next one we've got £168.60 because we're looking at the current sales total plus the previous value, and so on. So let's just jump back to rows between unbounded preceding. So unbounded preceding means that your window will constantly, your frame will be constantly changing. So it will take the current row and then take all previous rows into consideration. So instead of the word unbounded, I can change that to a value. So if I just change that to a number 1 and went ahead and executed that, we can see that that will change our frame. So if we look at sales ID 3, we can see we've still got the same amount. But if we look at sales ID 43, we can see that that total is a lot lower than we would expect to calculate a running total, and that's because the frame we have created is looking at the current row and only one row previously. If I was to change that to 2 and go ahead and execute that, we'd see that sales ID number 43 would be correct, but then when we get to sales ID number 83, we're again down. So unbounded preceding is what we can actually use to take into consideration all previous rows. So let's just change that back to unbounded, and there is even a further shortcut actually with calculating running totals. We can actually remove the and current row, so I'll just remove that and take out the between, and then SQL Server will recognise what we're trying to achieve. So we could simply use our order by statement, and perhaps we're using a partition as well, which we will be doing shortly. So we're ordering by sales date, rows unbounded preceding. So SQL Server automatically presumes we're using the current row in that fashion. I always prefer to write out and current row just to make sense of what we're doing, because if we are writing a lot of different running totals, then it can become quite complex, and then you can see what's happening. So if we've got a large volume of data and maybe we want to know the last 10 transactions a customer's made versus the next 10 they've made, and we're writing various bits of information to put together, it can always be better to write out the full terminology. So the next thing we're going to look at is calculating a running average, which is pretty much exactly the same, other than we're going to be using a different aggregate function. So in this case we're going to be using the average function, and then I'm simply going to copy the over clause. So as before, we're ordering by sales date, and we'll give that an alias as running average. And we'll go ahead and execute that now, and we could cast that to be a bit shorter than that number of decimal places. Okay, so we've rounded that down to 2 decimals now, so we can see the running average for sales ID 63. We've only got 1 value there. Then we bring in sales ID 3. They're exactly the same value, so we'd expect the average to say the same, and then it varies as we go on. So that is how we could calculate a running total and a running average. Now what we're going to do is have a look at the whole table. So I'm just going to comment out my where clause and go ahead and execute that, and then we'd be left with a running total, but this is now for all customers. So what we want to actually do with this data is add our partition. So we want to filter our data effectively into partitions. So we're going to write partition by before our order by clause, and we're going to be looking at sales cust ID. And we'll also add that to the select statement, so when we've got the data it does make a little bit of sense to us. So I'll just add in here sales cust ID as well. So if we go ahead and execute that, we can see we'll order that by sales cust ID to give us more sense. So we can have a look at sales cust ID 1. So every purchase this customer has made is the same value of $9.99, so we'd expect his running average to stay at that and his total gradually increasing. So we can see if we scroll down to customer 3 that we looked at in the initial example, his running average of spend with us is actually decreasing, so this customer is gradually spending less and less with us that we need to address. We have another customer here, customer ID 6, who again his average appears to be decreasing as well. So that could be a report we need to put together to management, maybe for some targeted marketing at the individual customer level to see how we can increase our profits. Really hope you have enjoyed that video. As I've said before, this is part of a mini series looking at window functions, so there will be other videos on the channel available for you to check out as well. Do check out my other videos, so I do have other videos other than specialising in window functions as well. So there are some SQL tutorials and integration services tutorials available on my channel, and we'll have more business intelligence work coming soon. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button to be made aware of when I do upload videos. Thanks a lot for watching.